Okay, folks, today we are going to try and get through 6 presidents. And with those 6 presidents, we will span 2 world wars, the Great Depression, and the Roaring Twenties. So, buckle up and get ready to learn about William Howard Taft, Woodrow Wilson, Warren G. Harding, Calvin Coolidge, Herbert Hoover, and Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Our first president today is William Howard Taft, who is the only president to have also held the title Chief Justice of State. He became the Chief Justice after President Harding appointed him in 1921. He served until only a month before his death in 1930. He valued his time on the Supreme Court more than his time being president. Taft was handpicked by President Roosevelt to follow him in office. However, Taft did not have the charisma that Roosevelt possessed or the expansive view of presidential power. Taft was also a large man who weighed as much as 300 pounds. Taft is known for being stuck in the White House bathtub. Well, what if I told you there is no evidence of that happening? In fact, there was no bathtub big enough for Taft in the White House. And a special bathtub was created by a Manhattan company, more than 7 feet long and 41 inches wide, and it weighed a ton. Taft lost his bid for re-election in 1913 because former President Roosevelt entered the race on a third-party ticket, splitting the Republican Party and allowing for Democratic nominee Woodrow Wilson to gain the office. Woodrow Wilson is our 28th president. Wilson wanted to keep the U.S. out of World War I and be a mediator between the warring countries. In fact, his re-election campaign slogan is, "He kept us out of the war." However, history has shown us this is not what happened. In 1915, a German submarine torpedoed and sank the British ocean liner RMS Lusitania, killing over 1,000 people, including 128 American citizens. Immediate entry into World War I did not happen, although Wilson and Congress built up the U.S. Army and Navy. The National Guard is established in 1916. America would enter World War I after Germany instituted a new policy of unrestricted submarine warfare, and the knowledge of the Zimmerman telegram, which sought to convince Mexico to join into the war against the USA, became known. American soldiers landed in France mid-1917. Wilson is the second president to have remarried while in office. His first wife, Ellen's health declined due to Bright's disease, and she died in 1914. Wilson met Edith Galt, courted her, and married her in 1915. Wilson is probably best known for his 14 points and his hand-on approach with the formation of the League of Nations. The 14 points was a speech where Wilson spoke of the need for organized common peace. After the war, the European nations agreed to form the League of Nations under Wilson's guidance. However, at home, the U.S. Congress refused to ratify the treaty or join the League of Nations. Wilson also changed a lot at home. He is known for the Federal Reserve System, the Federal Trade Commission, and changing the tax system. He was also the first president to visit Europe while still in office. In 1919, Wilson suffered a major stroke. His second wife, Edith, pre-screened all matters of state, effectively running the executive branch of the government for the remainder of Wilson's second term. Warren G. Harding became our 28th president in the first election that women could vote. He had been a United States Senator. He won on the slogan, "Return to Normalcy." Harding's presidency was marred in controversy. His Secretary of the Interior, Albert Fall, was found to have leased public land to oil companies in exchange for gifts. His Attorney General, Henry Dougherty, was accused of selling liquor permits during Prohibition, but Harding himself was never implicated in any wrongdoing. However, it did tarnish his reputation. After being accused of fathering a child with his mistress that he denied, DNA evidence came out in 2015 to confirm that he had had a daughter with her, and their heirs live today. During his presidency, he lowered the rate of unemployment by half its size. He also agreed with other world powers to stop the arms race of building large battleships. He was the first president to talk on the radio. He liked to play poker, and once lost a set of White House china in a poker game. Harding is not known for being one of the best presidents. In his short 2-year term, various scandals did nothing to help this image. Harding died while visiting San Francisco in 1923 from a supposed heart attack. Vice President Calvin Coolidge then became our 29th president. He immediately cleaned house, firing corrupt and inept officials. He was known for being honest, quiet, and hardworking. He wanted to keep the government small and lower taxes along with less government spending. Ironically, being a man of little words, Calvin Coolidge was the first president to appear in a talkie, which was a moving picture with sound. President Coolidge served the remainder of Harding's term and won in his own right in 1924. During that election, his son died of sepsis. Coolidge became depressed and had a subdued campaign. He signed an Immigration Act restricting immigration from Southern and Eastern European countries. He was suspicious of foreign alliances. He was in favor of civil rights and refused to appoint any man to office, and appointed African Americans to government positions, and advocated for anti-lynching laws. In 1924, he signed the Indian Citizens Act, granting citizenship to all Native Americans while permitting them to retain tribal land rights. He chose not to run for a second term and died 4 years after leaving office in 1933. Herbert Hoover is our 31st president, whose term ran from 1929 to 1933. He had the unfortunate timing to come into the presidency just before the start of the Great Depression. The Great Depression started in October of 1929 with the stock market crash, also known as Black Tuesday. Herbert's life was also hard as he was orphaned at age 9. First, his father died of heart attack, and then 3 years later, his mother died from pneumonia. Herbert and his older brother and sister were separated to live with various relatives. Herbert was sent to Oregon to live with his uncle. Herbert was recognized as a great humanitarian when he was nominated 5 times for the Nobel Peace Prize. He ensured the safe return of 120,000 American tourists stranded in Europe at the outbreak of World War I, and delivered food to neutral Belgium, where people faced starvation. He also headed the American Relief Administration. Did you know there was a sport named after Herbert Hoover? Well, there is. It's called Hoover Ball, and was played on a court like tennis, except that the ball was thrown and not hit with a racket. He would play it with his staff on the south lawn of the White House. There were 2 teams of 2 to 4 players and used a 6-pound medicine ball and an 8-foot-high net. A not-so-fun note was the name Hooverville, which were shanty towns built during the Great Depression by the homeless, who named the shack for the president, who was widely blamed for the Great Depression. A Hoover blanket was old newspapers used to stay warm, and Hoover flags, empty pockets turned out, and Hoover leather, which was cardboard used to line a shoe. And finally, a Hoover wagon, which was an automobile with horses hitched to it, often with the engine removed. Hoover lost his bid for re-election to Franklin Delano Roosevelt in 1933. Franklin Delano Roosevelt often ranks high on presidential lists along with Washington, Lincoln, and his fifth cousin, Theodore Roosevelt. He is the only president to have served not only a third term, but a partial fourth term before dying in office. There are hundreds of documentaries on FDR, and for the sake of my video, I'm going to try and keep it as short as I can. FDR contracted polio in 1921 when he was 39 years old. He rehabilitated himself at his home in Hyde Park and eventually was able to stand with braces. He bought a resort in Warm Springs, Georgia, where he turned it into a rehabilitation center for polio patients. He led the United States through the Great Depression. By the time he entered office, the banking system had collapsed and the unemployment rate was nearly 25% of the labor force. FDR put his New Deal in action almost immediately. He created new federal programs to jumpstart the economy. Some of these programs were the CCC, Civilian Conservation Corps, the TVA, Tennessee Valley Authority, and the WPA, Works Progress Administration. These were often called the alphabet agencies. It was really the war-related export demands and expanded government spending that brought the United States through the Great Depression. Roosevelt warned America about the dangers of the regimes in Italy, Germany, and Japan in 1937. The American public did not want another world war, and Roosevelt had to navigate helping our allies any way he could without sending American men over to fight. That is until December 7, 1941, when Japan attacked Pearl Harbor. After that, America was in the fight. Roosevelt was essential in getting Stalin's commitment to enter the war against Japan after Germany's surrender. Roosevelt died in office on April 12, 1945. Germany surrendered on May 7, 1945. And Japan surrendered on September 2nd, 1945. Yes, I've ended another video on a Roosevelt. I thought it was fitting. We're almost to the modern presidents and only have 13 more presidents to go. Thank you for viewing. Do not forget to click like and subscribe. And share with your friends. And as always, keep on learning. Thank you.